Would you please stand with me? Will you join me in acknowledging in gratitude southern Saskatchewan as the traditional homelands of the Nehewak, Nakota, Anishinaabe, Lakota, Dakota, and Michif peoples. Please join me in acknowledging with respect the sacred covenant called Treaty 4, which defines our relationship with these indigenous peoples and reminds us of the long history of the covenant-making Creator at work in this place. As we commit ourselves to the hard work of truth-telling and reconciliation that is part of the Creator's call on our lives. Teneke, Mekowich, thank you. You may be seated. Tansei, Nick Helliwell Nitsugun, Ekwa Oskina Kias Askateki Oshinia. Tatawa, Mema Kieske Tamawin. With apologies to the language keepers for my clumsy pronunciations, what I meant to say was my name is Nick Helliwell, and I am from the place where the bones are piled. Come, there is room here. Let us learn together. I want to begin by saying that I feel a bit like I'm preaching to the choir here because Vivian and I, as Indigenous peoples, have been warmly welcomed and loved here at West Hill. And so I do say thank you to each and every one of you. You have become very dear to us. September 30th is nationally recognized Day of Truth and Reconciliation, or in Shirt Day. And when we are talking about truth and reconciliation, when we are talking about treaties, when we are talking about residential schools, we're talking about relationships. And relationships cannot be legislated. The truth is that every human relationship requires reconciliation. So the title of my talk with you today is Walking the Journey of Reconciliation, and I want to do two things today. The first is that I want to review some biblical principles of reconciliation for us. And second is that Orange Shirt Day started with the story of Phyllis Wetstand. And so the best way that I can think of to share with you is to share some of my story, my journey in reconciliation. So in the video earlier, we saw these two verses. We need to be aware that reconciliation is not simply an act of obedience, but an expression of our Christian identity. It's not something that we just simply do. It is who we are. So let's begin with some biblical principles. First, reconciliation begins with God. While we were still sinners, Christ died for the ungodly. And while we were yet his enemies, Christ died for us. And in a seeming paradox, reconciliation comes before reconciliation with God. In Matthew 25, 23, and 24, Jesus warns us that if we do not forgive others, that the Father will not forgive us. And in the parable of the unmerciful servant, I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I have had on you? Matthew 18, 32 and 33. Reconciliation needs to be intentional. It is both an act of obedience and an expression of our Christian identity. It should distinguish us as Christians, whether offended or the offender or someone in between. God expects his people to initiate reconciliation. And reconciliation needs to be bathed in prayer. It cannot happen apart from God. It does cost us. Just as it cost God his only Son, so reconciliation will cost us. In terms of commitment to hard work, of being willing to listen, to learn, and to bring about change. We pray for those who need reconciliation, presenting them before the cross in prayer as ministers of reconciliation. It's God who needs to soften the hearts, ease the emotions, heal the hurts, and bring understanding. As a product of the 60s scoop, let me share with you how this truth and reconciliation is being worked out in my life. Everyone has a homeland. I want to pause for a minute and let you think about that word, homeland, and what it means to you. Land acknowledgements have come to mean a great deal for me, because I remember the day when I was first able to admit to myself that I am an Indigenous person, without a sense of shame that usually came flooding in. Somewhere in my journey, I stopped praying over myself for protection whenever I heard one of the elders or people praying in Cree, thinking that it was somehow evil. In the word tatawa, tatao, I've recognized a reciprocity that I think needs more highlighting. And see, when I say tatawa, I'm not only speaking to newcomers, but to non-Indigenous and to my own people as well. The word comes from the idea of in a teepee, where I say, tatao, come in, there is room. What I am really saying is, come in, we will make room. And to those within the teepee, with me, as they hear me say, tatao, I am saying, let's make room for our guest. It's not simply a statement of reconciliation, but also a call to be reconciled. So here is a word that I learned only recently. Next slide, please. Kitopatan, which is the closest concept that the Nehawa, that is the Cree, have to what Canadians know as justice. Language is a means of communicating ideas and concepts that do not always translate directly. Many of the Indigenous people that I know are not seeking justice as you may know it. The Canadian justice system is built around compensation and settlement. Indigenous people are used to taking whatever is being freely handed out. I mean, why not? But until Canada, as we as Canadians fully understand Kinobatan, I fear that the handouts will continue to the detriment of us all. Another phrase that I would like to share with you is Oskana Kia Asaskateke, which roughly translates to bones that are piled, pile of bones, or more properly, the place where the bones are piled. And it was this was the Cree name of this area long before the arrival of the Europeans. In fact, when the settlers arrived, there were huge cairns of buffalo bones piled here, approximately 30 feet high. According to the City of Regina website and other sources, and I quote, "Indigenous peoples have lived in this region through many thousands of years. The area was one of the important places where Indigenous people would come to hunt the roaming herds of bison. They began to stack the long bison bones into large piles in an effort to honor the animal's spirit. As the bison herds were becoming depleted due to overhunting by non-Indigenous hunters, Indigenous peoples named the area Oskana Kea Askateki, which roughly translates to bone piles. European explorers, fur traders, and settlers translated this to pile of bones. The buffalo were sacred, and although people would use every part of the buffalo, if you killed 10 or more in a hunt, you can't use every part of every buffalo. Make sense? But since the buffalo are sacred, you can't just simply throw the bones away. So they carried them, and they laid them to rest here. But Oskana Kea Askateki is a sacred idea. It wants to find a place of gathering, of treaty, of peace, even celebration. See, growing up, as I did in Regina, pile of bones was kind of a joke, and a bad one at that. But this is where I'm going with all that. As you go down Elphinstone Street, you're going to see one of my visions come to life. The mural was commissioned by Circle Project, and it's titled "Welcome to Our Sacred Space." Notice the town in the background where it's darker. On the far end there we have a building which could be an Indian residential school. In the middle there somewhere we have a little crooked church. But it's in the background where it's darker because we don't deny a dark past. This is the hard work of truth-telling. We need to recognize what has happened, what has passed. But Oskana Kea Askateki was a sacred place to honor the past. And the pile of bones were to represent prayers for the future. Tatao is a phrase of invitation and welcome. But it is also, as I said, a phrase of reconciliation. So the mural depicts a resurgence of Indigenous culture. Revival of the buffalo. The eagle represents the Indigenous spirit and our aspirations, taking flight once again and returning to this place. The cross and the sacred circle combine to represent a new cooperation and spiritual understandings. And the open space in the foreground is meant to invite you into this new spirit of truth and reconciliation. Circle Project, Gentle Road, and Regina Discipleship Project work together to bring about openness, welcome, and we hope to restore the dignity to the original place that all of us now call home. For the past 4 years, West Hill, you have been a part of my journey towards reconciliation, and that means a journey toward a restitution of dignity for me, for my kids, for my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren. And for that I say, Dedicate. Thank you. Edmund Metawabin said, Kinopatatan means that you've been listened to by someone compassionate and fair, and that your needs will be taken seriously. That for the indigenous peoples, this is what justice means, that we've been listened to by people who are compassionate and fair, and that our needs are taken seriously. Here in Regina, many people don't know that we had our own residential school. That on the west side of the city there is a graveyard where over 30 children are buried. It was almost plowed under at one point, but for people that spoke up, it is preserved, and the places where those children lie are now marked. There's even been some work done finding out who they are. But the people, not all the children who died because of the residential school here in Regina are buried here, because there was an outbreak of TB, and many of them were sent home sick and spread the disease to their home communities. In my research, in my understandings, I've learned that a young boy by the name of Thomas Moore attended the Regina Indian Industrial School. And Thomas Moore is the little boy that you see in the white paper that was written by Nicholas Flood Davin, another person from Regina, a settler. And he dressed this little boy up in such a way that he would look savage. And in the picture, he's wearing a wig. He's actually dressed in women's clothes, not men's clothes. And in his hand, they put a little wooden gun to make him look more fierce. And then on the other side, they put him in his school uniform, made him stand straight and upright. When the settlers came to North America, to Turtle Island, they brought a lot of knowledge and technology. But I assure you that this was not the first time. They did not bring the Creator with them. They did not bring, because He was already here. And the indigenous people had a knowledge that I think that we all need and needs to come back. A way of understanding our place in the world. I carry my feather today, and I just want to share a little story with you about this feather. Because when I first came to Jesus and we came to the church, we were told to burn all of our indigenous things. And my wife Vivian had a feather very similar to this one that was given to her by her very favorite uncle. See, these feathers are very sacred to us. And I did a very cruel thing, because we believed that Jesus Christ was in the church at the time. We obeyed what they had told us, and we took that feather and we burnt it, believing it to be evil. In our journey, we've learned to reclaim our understandings of who we are as a people. And as I reclaim my culture, as I reclaim my language, I reclaim my dignity. Next slide, please. This particular feather was given to me by a person who I had the privilege of leading to Jesus Christ. And he put his trust in Jesus. And then afterward, he presented me with this feather. And so I carry it. And I've got to admit that there have been times when I've been asked to churches to speak, where I've kind of been ashamed. And I haven't brought it along, or I've hidden it. But again, I want to say thank you to you as my church family, that I can share my journey, that I can share with you these stories of reconciliation, because I know that you do take them seriously. I am so incredibly honored to be asked to speak to you today about this important topic. So as the musicians return to the dais here, I would ask you, how are you going to recognize the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation? There will be some events going on at the graveyard on Tuesday morning. There's also a monument at the Government House on Dudney Avenue. There's a number of different events that Circle Project is involved in, and other organizations. The library, I believe, has some things, City of Regina, etc. Certainly as a church, West Hill, you have made great strides in truth and reconciliation. But the journey never ends. It's a relationship. It's a relationship that has been defined by our Creator, our God, as one that's ongoing. It defines who we are, and it should distinguish us as His people. So, as individuals, will you grant the indigenous peoples of this land kinopatatan? Hi.